For 6 years, Mari Santos had been the security guard at Millbrook Shopping Center with a perfect record. Never late, never a complaint, never a problem with anyone. She was quiet, reliable, invisible. No one suspected that Mari's Bronze Star medal was hidden in a drawer at home, and that this harmless security guard would soon single-handedly neutralize 3 armed robbers. Welcome to the Untold Stories. Before we dive into this incredible tale of hidden military expertise and unexpected heroism, tell me in the comments what city are you watching from today? And if you believe stories like this deserve to be heard, hit that subscribe button. These stories matter. Millbrook Shopping Center sat at the heart of suburban Tennessee, a sprawling complex of department stores, specialty shops, and restaurants that served 3 surrounding communities. On any given Saturday, thousands of people moved through its corridors, browsing, buying, and socializing in the climate-controlled comfort that had defined American retail for decades. Mari Santos had been part of that landscape for 6 years. As familiar and unremarkable as the potted plants or directional signs, at 42, she wore her navy blue security uniform with quiet professionalism, her shoulder-length black hair always neatly pulled back, her badge polished, her radio always at the ready. To most shoppers, Mari was invisible. They might nod politely if she gave directions, or wave absently if she helped them find their car in the parking lot, but few people really saw her. She was just part of the background, another middle-aged woman in a service job, doing her duty quietly and without fanfare. What they didn't see was the way Mari's eyes constantly scanned the environment, noting unusual behavior, tracking potential problems, and assessing threats with the automatic precision of someone trained to protect lives. They didn't notice how she positioned herself near high-traffic areas during busy periods, or how she maintained clear sight lines to all exit points in whatever section of the mall she was patrolling. The other security guards treated Mari with polite indifference. She was competent, they acknowledged, but she lacked the aggressive edge they associated with real security work. When situations required physical intervention, breaking up fights between teenagers, dealing with shoplifters, or confronting disruptive customers, they usually stepped forward while Mari provided backup or called for additional help. She's good with the paperwork, her supervisor had once told a new hire, and the female customers feel comfortable talking to her. But when things get serious, we handle it. The comment had been made in Mari's presence, but she'd simply nodded and continued writing her incident report. What her colleagues didn't know was that Mari's calm demeanor wasn't passivity, it was discipline. 20 years of military training had taught her to observe, assess, and act only when action was necessary. The aggressive posturing that some guards used to establish authority seemed unnecessary and often counterproductive to someone who'd learned that real strength was quiet, controlled, and purposeful. Mari's typical day started at a.m. when she relieved the overnight security officer. She'd walk a complete circuit of the mall, checking for any issues that might have developed during the night: broken locks, suspicious packages, maintenance problems that could create safety hazards. Her radio crackled regularly with routine communications, reports of lost children, requests for assistance with unruly customers, updates on store openings and closings. The rhythm was predictable and peaceful, exactly what Mari had been looking for when she'd taken the job 6 years ago. After 2 decades of military service that had included deployments to some of the world's most dangerous places, the quiet predictability of mall security had felt like a gift. She left the Army in 2018 as a staff sergeant, having served her full 20 years in the military police. Her service record included deployments to Iraq and Afghanistan, where she'd been responsible for base security operations, convoy protection, and detainee handling. She'd earned commendations for valor under fire and had been recognized for her leadership in training younger MPs in combat zone procedures. But when Mari returned to civilian life, she'd deliberately chosen a path that would keep her far from the high-stress, life-or-death decision-making that had defined her military career. Mall security offered the opportunity to serve her community in a peaceful environment, using her protective instincts without the constant threat of violence that had marked her years in uniform. The transition hadn't been easy. For months after, starting at the mall, Mari would wake up in the middle of the night, listening for sounds that didn't belong, her body automatically responding to threats that existed only in her memory. Crowded spaces made her nervous, and she found herself mentally cataloging exit routes and potential cover positions even during routine patrols. Gradually, though, the peaceful environment had helped her find a new equilibrium. She learned to appreciate the simple satisfaction of helping lost children find their parents, de-escalating minor disputes between customers, and ensuring that people could shop safely without fear. It wasn't the same kind of mission she'd had in the military, but it was still service, still protection, still meaningful work. Mari's colleagues had no idea about her background. During the hiring process, she'd mentioned military service when asked about her experience, but she'd been deliberately vague about details. Military police, mostly stateside assignments, she'd said, which was technically true if you didn't count the combat deployments. The hiring manager had been more interested in her clean record and references than in specifics about her service. Over the years, Mari had built a reputation as the guard who could handle difficult situations without escalation. When elderly customers became confused or upset, Mari would patiently guide them to their destination. When teenagers got too rowdy, she had a way of redirecting their energy without confrontation. When domestic disputes spilled into the public areas, Mari could diffuse tension with a combination of calm authority and genuine empathy. She's got a good touch with people, the mall manager had told corporate when Mari came up for her annual review. Never had a complaint, never had an incident escalate on her watch. Customers trust her. What the mall manager didn't understand was that Mari's effectiveness came from years of training in crowd control, de-escalation techniques, and threat assessment. The skills that had kept military personnel safe in forward operating bases translated surprisingly well to keeping shoppers safe in retail environments. The only hint of Mari's military background was visible on rare occasions when she rolled up her sleeves during maintenance work. A small tattoo on her left forearm bore the military police insignia, but it was faded enough that most people who noticed it assumed it was decorative rather than occupational. Mari had been content with her anonymity until the Saturday afternoon when everything changed. It was October 15th, a busy weekend when early holiday shoppers were beginning to crowd the stores. The mall was bustling with families, teenagers, and couples enjoying the comfortable fall weather by shopping indoors. Mari was conducting her routine PM patrol when she noticed something that made her situational awareness spike. 3 men had entered the mall through different entrances, but they were moving in a coordinated pattern that suggested familiarity with each other and with the layout of the building. They were dressed casually, but their movements had the purposeful quality that Mari recognized from her military experience. She keyed her radio discreetly. "Control, this is Santos. I'm tracking 3 individuals who may be conducting surveillance." Continuing to observe. "Copy, Santos," came the reply from the security office. "Keep us posted." Mari adjusted her position to maintain visual contact with all 3 men while staying far enough away to avoid detection. They were moving systematically through the mall, spending just enough time in each store to appear like legitimate shoppers while clearly mapping the locations of cash registers, exit points, and security cameras. One of the men, tall with a beard and wearing a baseball cap, seemed to be the leader. He was coordinating the others through subtle hand signals and brief conversations disguised as casual encounters. The second man was heavy-set with a distinctive limp that suggested an old injury. The third was younger, maybe early 20s, with nervous energy that made him stand out from the typical weekend shoppers. Mari's training kicked in automatically. She began mentally cataloging their positions, noting their clothing and assessing potential weapons based on the way they moved and how their clothes fit. The leader's jacket hung in a way that suggested something heavy in an inside pocket. The heavy-set man's limp caused him to favor his right side, but his left hand kept moving to his waistband. The younger man's backpack was positioned for quick access rather than comfort. After 20 minutes of observation, Mari was certain she was watching a robbery crew conducting final reconnaissance. Their pattern was too systematic, their coordination too precise, and their interest in cash handling areas too focused to be coincidental. She keyed her radio again. "Control, Santos. I need to speak with management immediately. We have a potential security situation developing." The response was dismissive. "Santos, we're busy with a shoplifting incident in the department store. Can this wait?" Negative. "Control. This is time sensitive." There was a pause, then, "Stand by." Mari continued tracking the three men while waiting for backup communication. They had completed their circuit of the main level and were now moving toward the upper floor, using the escalators in a pattern that kept them separated but allowed them to maintain visual contact with each other. Her radio crackled again. "Santos, this is Manager Davis. What's your situation?" "Sir, I have 3 subjects conducting systematic reconnaissance of cash handling locations. Based on their coordination and behavior patterns, I assess them as a robbery crew preparing for an operation." Another pause. "Santos, are you certain? I don't want to create unnecessary alarm over suspicious shoppers." Mari understood the manager's hesitation. A false alarm could create panic, disrupt business, and potentially expose the mall to liability if innocent customers were wrongly accused. But her military experience had taught her to trust her instincts when it came to threat assessment. "Sir, I recommend immediate contact with local police and activation of our emergency protocols. These individuals are not shoppers." "All right, Santos, I'll call it in. Continue monitoring but maintain distance. Do not engage." Mari acknowledged the instruction while mentally noting that the warning about engagement was probably unnecessary. In her current capacity, she had no authority to detain anyone, and her equipment consisted of a radio, a flashlight, and a can of pepper spray. If these men were planning what she suspected, she was significantly outgunned and would need to rely on police response. But as she continued her surveillance, Mari noticed something that changed the tactical picture. The 3 men were no longer just conducting reconnaissance, they were moving into position. The leader had taken a spot near the main entrance that would allow him to control access and egress. The heavy-set man was positioning himself near the central court area where he could oversee multiple stores simultaneously. The younger man was moving toward the upper level where the jewelry stores were located. Mari keyed her radio urgently. "Control, subjects are moving into operational positions." "This is happening now." The response came immediately. "Police are en route, ETA 8 minutes. Maintain observation and report 8 minutes." Mari calculated quickly if these men were professionals, they could complete a coordinated robbery of multiple stores and be gone in 5 minutes or less. Police response time wouldn't be fast enough to prevent the crime, only to investigate it afterward. That's when Mari faced a decision that would define everything that followed. She could continue observing from a safe distance, documenting events for the police report and insurance claims that would follow. It was the safe choice, the reasonable choice, the choice that any security guard manual would recommend. Or she could draw on 20 years of training that had taught her that sometimes protection requires action, even when the odds aren't favorable. And the risks are significant. Mari made her choice. She keyed her radio one final time. "Control, I'm moving to intercept. Alert all stores to initiate lockdown procedures immediately." "Santos, negative. You are not authorized to engage. Maintain distance until police arrive." But Mari was already moving, her hand unconsciously touching the small of her back where she'd once carried a sidearm, her mind automatically shifting into the tactical mindset that had kept her alive through multiple combat deployments. The robbery began exactly as Mari had predicted. The leader near the main entrance pulled out a pistol and fired 2 shots into the ceiling, the sound echoing through the mall like thunder. Shoppers screamed and scattered as the coordinated assault began, everyone on the ground. The leader shouted, "This is a robbery. Nobody moves, nobody gets hurt." The heavy-set man had produced a shotgun from somewhere and was herding panicked shoppers toward the central court, away from the store entrances. The younger man was already moving toward the jewelry stores, a pistol in his hand and a demanding look of desperate determination on his face. Mari was 50 yards away when the shooting started, close enough to see the terror on shoppers' faces, but far enough from the main action to avoid immediate detection. Her military training had taught her that the first rule of engagement was to avoid being killed in the initial moments of contact. She needed to assess the full tactical situation before acting. The 3 robbers were operating with military-style precision, but Mari could see flaws in their positioning. The leader was focused on crowd control but had his back to a service corridor that could provide concealed approach. The heavy-set man was effective at hurting civilians but had positioned himself in a location with limited fields of fire. The younger man was clearly the most nervous and therefore the most unpredictable, but also the most likely to make mistakes under pressure. Mari had perhaps 60 seconds before the situation escalated beyond her ability to influence it. She could see at least 40 civilians in the immediate area, including elderly shoppers and families with small children. If panic took hold or if the robbers became more aggressive, people would be hurt or killed. Drawing on muscle memory that had been honed through countless hours of training and real-world experience, Mari began moving toward the leader's position using the service corridor she'd identified. Her approach was silent, systematic, and purposeful, exactly the way she'd been taught to move through hostile territory when lives depended on remaining undetected. As she moved, Mari's mind was calculating distances, angles of approach, and timing. She had no weapon except her training, but 20 years of military police experience had taught her that sometimes training was enough. The leader was 20 feet away when Mari emerged from the service corridor behind him. He was still focused on the crowd, still shouting orders, still completely unaware that his tactical position had been compromised by someone who understood warfare better than he did. Mari closed the distance in 3 quick steps, her approach masked by the noise and chaos of panicking shoppers. When she was close enough, she did something that would be replayed on security cameras and analyzed by police tacticians for months afterward. In one fluid motion, Mari grabbed the gunman's weapon hand with her left hand while driving her right elbow into the nerve cluster at the base of his neck. The technique was designed to temporarily disrupt neurological function while maintaining control of the weapon, a non-lethal takedown method that military police used when apprehending suspects in crowded areas. The leader's pistol discharged harmlessly into the floor as his nervous system temporarily shut down. Mari secured the weapon and used his momentary incapacitation to position him between herself and the other 2 robbers, turning him into an unwilling human shield while she assessed her next moves. "Drop your weapons," Mari shouted, her voice carrying the command authority that had been drilled into her through years of military training. "Security, everyone stay down." The heavy-set man turned toward the commotion, his shotgun swinging toward Mari's position, but he hesitated when he saw that she was using his partner as cover, uncertain whether he could take a shot without hitting his accomplice. That hesitation gave Mari the opening she needed. Still controlling the leader's weapon with one hand, she reached for her radio with the other. "Control, suspects are armed and engaging. I have 1 weapon secured, 2 still active. Lock down all stores immediately." The younger man near the jewelry stores panicked when he saw his leader being controlled by someone he'd never seen before. His military-style coordination had depended on following orders from the bearded man, and with that leadership structure disrupted, he didn't know how to respond. "Let him go," the younger man shouted, pointing his pistol in Mari's general direction but clearly afraid to fire with civilians and his partner in the potential line of fire. Mari could see that the young robber was increasingly agitated, his weapon shaking in his hands as stress overwhelmed his training. He was the most dangerous element in the situation, now unpredictable, scared, and armed, using techniques she'd learned for hostage negotiation and military police training. Mari kept her voice calm and authoritative. You need to put down your weapon and surrender. Police are already en route. You can end this safely, but the younger man was beyond rational conversation. Mari could see in his eyes the look of someone who felt trapped and was considering desperate action. She had perhaps 10 seconds before he did something that would endanger everyone in the mall. That's when Mari made the decision that would cement her legend at Millbrook Shopping Center forever. In one calculated movement, she disabled the leader completely with a pressure point technique, secured his pistol, and charged directly at the younger gunman. Her approach was tactically sound but appeared suicidal to anyone watching. She was running toward an armed man across 40 feet of open ground with no cover and no backup. But Mari understood something that the robbers didn't. Panic makes people slow, and training makes people fast. The younger man tried to bring his weapon to bear on Mari, but 20 years of combat conditioning had taught her how to move unpredictably. While under fire, she zigzagged as she approached, using panicked shoppers as concealment, closing the distance faster than he could track. When she reached him, Mari executed a textbook weapon disarmament that was so smooth it looked choreographed. The gunman's pistol was in her hands before he fully understood what had happened, and he was on the ground in a control hold that rendered him completely helpless. The heavy-set man with the shotgun now found himself facing a trained military police veteran who was armed with 2 pistols and clearly knew how to use them. More importantly, he was facing someone who moved and thought like a soldier rather than a civilian. Drop the shotgun, Mari commanded, both weapons pointed at center mass. You're surrounded and outgunned. The man looked around desperately, but Mari was right. Police sirens were audible in the distance. The mall was locked down, and his 2 partners were neutralized. His military-style coordination had crumbled when faced with someone who understood tactics better than they did. The shotgun clattered to the floor as the man raised his hands in surrender. Mari maintained her defensive position until police arrived 2 minutes later, both weapons secured and all 3 suspects under control. When the first officers entered the mall, they found a scene that looked more like the aftermath of a military operation than a typical security incident. Ma'am, the lead officer said, surveying the situation with obvious amazement, I'm going to need a detailed report on what happened here. Mari set the recovered weapons down carefully and pulled out her security badge. Staff Sergeant Maria Santos, retired military police. These 3 subjects attempted coordinated robbery of multiple stores. All weapons are secured, no civilians injured. The police officer looked at the 3 suspects, all of whom were secured with restraint techniques that were clearly military in origin, then back at Mari and her mall security uniform. Staff Sergeant, he said with new respect, I think we need to talk. Over the following hours, as police processed the scene and interviewed witnesses, the full scope of what had happened became clear. The 3 robbers had been planning to hit multiple high-value stores simultaneously, taking advantage of the busy Saturday crowd to create confusion and delay police response. Their coordination and timing suggested professional-level planning, but they hadn't counted on running into someone with 20 years of military police training who recognized their tactics and knew how to counter them, the security footage told. The story in dramatic detail. Mari's tactical movement through the service corridor, her precise takedown of the leader, her bold charge across open ground, and her professional disarmament of multiple suspects. It was a textbook demonstration of military police tactics adapted to civilian law enforcement. Mall manager Davis, who had initially been reluctant to take Mari's warnings seriously, was effusive in his praise. I had no idea, he kept saying. 6 years she's worked here, and I had no idea she was capable of something like this. but it was the reaction of Mari's fellow security guards that meant the most to her. The same colleagues who had dismissed her as good with paperwork now looked at her with a mixture of awe and embarrassment. "Why didn't you ever tell us?" asked Jim Rodriguez, the guard who had made the comment about letting others handle serious situations. Mari considered the question seriously. "It never came up," she said simply. "And I wasn't looking to relive that life. I came here for peace and quiet." "Well," Rodriguez said with a rueful laugh, "I guess peace and quiet found you anyway." The aftermath of the incident transformed Mari's role at the mall permanently. Corporate security offered her a promotion to head of mall security, with a significant salary increase and expanded responsibilities. Local police asked her to consult on active shooter training for mall employees. The media wanted interviews about her background and her actions. Mari declined most of the attention, accepting only the promotion and the opportunity to help train other security personnel in threat assessment and emergency response. She had no interest in becoming a public figure or in revisiting her military experiences for entertainment value. "I did my job," she told the reporter who managed to reach her for comment. "That's what training is for, using it when it matters." But privately, Mari had to acknowledge that the incident had awakened something in her that she thought was permanently retired. The rush of tactical thinking, the satisfaction of successful mission completion, the knowledge that her actions had protected innocent people, it all reminded her why she'd chosen military service in the first place. 3 months later, when a new security guard was hired to work under Mari's supervision, she made sure to brief him thoroughly on threat assessment, tactical positioning, and the importance of taking every potential security concern seriously. "Most days," she told him, "nothing happens. But the day something does happen, you need to be ready to act on what you've observed and trained for." The new guard, a young man fresh out of the police academy, listened respectfully to everything Mari said. Unlike her previous colleagues, he understood from day one that he was working for someone with extraordinary qualifications and experience. "Ma'am," he asked during his first week, "do you miss the military?" Mari thought about the question as she conducted her evening patrol through the now peaceful mall corridors. 6 months ago, she would have said no without hesitation. The quiet civilian life she'd built had been exactly what she'd wanted after 20 years of high-stress military service, but the incident had reminded her that service takes many forms, and that the skills she'd learned in uniform could still be used to protect people even in civilian life. She'd found a way to honor her military training while building the peaceful life she'd wanted. "I miss the mission," she said finally, "but I've learned that the mission doesn't always require a uniform." Staff Sergeant Maria Santos, United States Army Military Police, retired. Millbrook Shopping Center Chief of Security, silent guardian, quiet professional. A woman who'd learned that sometimes the most important battles are fought not on distant battlefields, but in the places where ordinary people go about their daily lives, trusting that someone with extraordinary training is watching over them.